right, back to it now. We'll get back to the Patriot Mobile Freedom Hotline and Free for All Friday calls from all over America in a moment. But I do have to talk for a moment about Supreme Court decisions that are on the way because they're extremely important. And my next guest, Andrew Riddaugh, is the CEO of Liberation Technology Services, formerly with the Trump White House. He worked there. And America, he believes, as some of us do as well, is riding on this upcoming Supreme Court decision. Andrew, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
All right, so Thursday passed yesterday. Didn't expect it quite yet. They always save the biggest decisions for last. Next Thursday coming. They could trickle into July, but generally that does not happen. So as I look at the map here and look at the calendar, we got one more Thursday left, don't we?
Exactly. And, you know, the Supreme Court likes to keep us on our toes. So it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility for them to do a Friday surprise, especially on a topic this big.
Right. So, okay. So explain to the folks the case of major concern. I think they know, but just lay it out for them and tell them what you think is going to happen.
Yeah, so the case is Missouri versus Murthy, which Louisiana, there's several plaintiffs, but Louisiana and Missouri brought lawsuits against the Biden administration and their collaboration with technology companies. Essentially, the Biden administration going to, social media platforms and other technology companies and saying, hey, we don't like the content or the narrative that is being put out by these citizens. We need you to take it down, which is a direct infringement on First Amendment rights.
Well, it's the government dictating what we get to see, read, and hear. It's the government dictating for one political candidate while silencing criticisms of the other and doing other things like telling us that the Hunter Biden laptop was just Russian disinformation. Of course, today they're telling us when we see Joe Biden, plummet down the stairs of Air Force One, that's a deep fake video, even when it's a live feed. So, they'll tell us anything, right? How important do you think this case is?
Well, I think it's critical because we've seen this type of behavior take place in 1930s Germany, in Stalin's Russia, where the government essentially controls the narrative within the country. And if we're only being presented one side of the facts, that's incredibly dangerous because citizens no longer have the ability to learn both sides of an argument and make their own informed decisions.
Do you find it remarkable, Andrew, as I do, that the left will sit there and say, silence, silence, and shut people down and deplatform people and cancel people while they're calling the other team the fascists? Isn't that remarkable? They're shutting people down, throwing people in jail, like Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon, and they'd like to put Donald Trump in jail. I hope they do, actually, for about 3 days. It'll be worth about $400 million in campaign money a day. So go ahead and do that. It'll be about $1.2 billion. But isn't it remarkable how they attack and deplatform and arrest while calling everybody else fascists? Seems odd, doesn't it?
It is, but they're also using essentially two forms of standards, right? As you were talking about, they started calling the unedited videos of Biden being let off the stage by President Obama, a cheap fake, just media in poor taste. But then almost in the same breath, they did the exact same thing to President Trump and Donald Trump Jr., where they were shaking hands and they took that 1 second clip and made it a still image and said, well, Trump's no longer able to mentally and physically walk down a stage. So it really is kind of two sides, and it's really depending on, who does the narrative benefit. And that's where it becomes very dangerous because now it's the weaponization of speech in the media.
What happened to reasonable people? I worked with a lot of reasonable people. You now have this thing, and I'm going to share this with folks. CBS News Confirmed is this new thing they've just launched at CBS News, which, by the way, CBS has gone to the left of MSNBC recently. I mean, CBS News is gone. It's bizarre, but they have this thing called CBS News Confirmed, where you can trust what they say, as if, wait a second, CBS News previously was not confirmed? Was it just a roll of the dice, a shot in the dark? What was it before CBS News Confirmed? Now you can believe what they say at CBS News Confirmed. They'll fact check it for you. And if they say it's real, Andrew, it's real. Talk about hand in hand with the Biden administration. The Bureau of Truth is open for business, apparently.
Yeah, and what's even more concerning when you're seeing CBS Truth, really what they're likely doing is using an AI, which we saw with Google Gemini, and using that to verify all of this information. But these platforms can have inherent biases built
Of
into
course
them.
they do.
And so if you're not even having a person fact check, put their own bias into it and perspective into it, we're now handing over what is true and what is not true into the hands of a machine. And, that is where it becomes very, very concerning. Who knows? Next, they may just say, well, we're going to elect a AI president, right?
Well, they would like to do that. They'd have more manipulation power. But Alexis, Siri, ChatGPT, all of these AI platforms have all been shown not just to have some bias, to have blatant, severe bias to the left and away from the right, right? Very simple questions become very loaded and very wrong, right? When it comes to climate change, I asked Siri here a while back, what kills more people annually, heat or cold? Well, heat does, said Siri. Completely wrong. It's 10 to 20 times to 1 more people die from cold weather on this planet than hot. They've done massive studies, but there have been massive studies on this topic many times. It's just an easy thing to point to. So when it comes to politics and the Hunter Biden laptop or Donald Trump, anyhow, what do you expect out of this Supreme Court decision?
Well, I'm hoping that the justices obviously, side with the Constitution, but I think that there are other, really interesting court cases. There's a case out of Florida and Texas that are working its way through the courts, which protects or gives these governors the ability to protect their citizens' First Amendment rights. But the decision that we're seeing today could also have implications on Section 230, because these technology platforms are protected by 230 up until they become publishers and content moderators. So if they're found to be content moderators on behalf of the government, hypothetically, the protections that they're granted under that statute goes away. And that can make a very interesting 2024 for, everyone in this country.
Right. We've also got the case on the Chevron doctrine and whether or not all of these big agencies can run your life and mine. We haven't seen that. Of course, we haven't seen the immunity case for Donald Trump as president of the United States. We haven't seen that. There's some big cases hanging out there. Have not seen them yet. So social media, abortion, Trump immunity, the Chevron doctrine, it's all out there. So we've got a big week ahead. Andrew, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
Greatly appreciated. Yeah, a big week ahead. All those cases are still hanging in the balance.